As the full moon rises above the fields, shadows begin to move. What lurks within the darkness has glaring eyes fixed upon you. Now join your host Vonda during this hour of the haunted harvest moon.
On this harvest moon.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Haunted Harvest Moon, where we dare to discuss the topics of paranormal. Tonight I have a great show. I have to apologize on the air to my guest. I goofed big time the other night and got my dates all screwed up. And he was trying to call in as I was doing another show, so I was lucky and got him to come back tonight, and I want to apologize again. It was my big goof, but hopefully that's the only one I make. But tonight I have Keith Johnson. Keith has had an interest in the paranormal since he was a teenager. When he had phenomena occurred in his home in the 70s. He was a member of the Paranormal Research Group in Rhode Island, out of Rhode Island. And Keith has been featured on the Sci-Fi Channel, Ghost Hunters, as a counseling demonologist, and both him and his wife Sandra are former core members of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and we know that as TAPS. So, Keith, are you with us?
Yes, I am with you.
Great.
Good evening.
Great. I'm glad I got you back on here. I felt so bad that I goofed up. It was, it's been a very rough 2 months, so.
Well, it was kind of rough over here that night too, so it worked out just as well. Things were very hectic, so these things do happen.
Yeah, we want to, also, that night, Keith's wife, Sandra, had hurt her ankles, so everybody keep her in your thoughts and prayers, the quick recovery, and she can get up moving around and not have to sit there and do what Keith tells her to do.
Right, yes, yeah, I'm telling her to keep easy and just try to stay off it as much as possible, and so I've been being very much the house husband lately.
Well, we're glad that she is doing better, and we're glad that you're on the show. Now, I want you to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in paranormal. I know you, in your little bio that I read out, it was started in your home back in the 70s. But tell us how you really got into it and the demonology side of it. And, you know, this is how out of it I have been, but as I was doing research, I realized Carl is your brother.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah. I seen pictures and thought, boy, you guys look an awful lot alike. Well, then I got to looking, and I was seeing a lot of interviews and different places you had been together, and I thought, that's his brother. No wonder they look so much alike. So, yeah, sometimes it takes me a while. I have them blonde moments every now and then. So,
Yeah.
So tell us how you got started.
Well, I had an interest. Carl and I both had an interest from the time we were very young. We always had an interest in, spooky stuff and things that go bump in the night. And Halloween was one of our favorite times of year, especially because we had things going on in the house that really couldn't be explained. Now, that doesn't mean it was the Amityville horror that things were going on constantly. Just every once in a while, things would happen that we couldn't really explain, like objects being moved. They were in places where they hadn't been left, and sudden things appearing that didn't belong to us, things like that. And one time, my mother was drinking, I like to tell this story of our thirsty ghost. My mother was drinking a glass of water one night, and suddenly it just, I don't know if you want to say vaporized, it just bubbled up and vanished, and leaving her holding an empty glass. So we call that our thirsty ghost. And, just things like that would happen. Noises outside, voices, footsteps, talking. Then in our mid-teens, my brother and my sister decided they were going to try to contact this spirit through a Ouija board, and that really seemed to activate it. suddenly it wasn't as fun. It started out fun, like a game, but it became much more activated and even hostile. Then we started getting manifestations. My brother started seeing a spirit moving around of a woman, definitely a woman's spirit, in the cellar of our house. So we realized something was amiss there. Then it was also, of course, I had this interest in it and was studying as much as possible. I wanted to be able to help people, which was difficult at the time because this is going back to the 1970s, the early 1970s. There was no internet, obviously. How do you get the word out to go to help people? So I prayed about it. Then one evening, my brother and I just happened to attend a lecture by Ed and Lorraine Warren, given at Rhode Island College. And it was advertised, Ed and Lorraine Warren, Seekers of the Supernatural. And that's how we became involved. We met Ed and Lorraine Warren afterwards, and that became a lifelong friendship, and realized, gee, if these people go all over the world doing this, maybe we're not so crazy after all. Yeah. And Carl and I were 17 years old at the time. That same night, we met Donna, who was the chairperson of Parapsychological Investigation and Research Organization at Rhode Island College. She invited Carl and I to be guest speakers, and at her organization, one thing led to another, and we joined their group. We were invited to, and that's how we became involved in our first paranormal investigation group ever. And of course, we were studying the darker aspects like demonology. I was also studying angelology. I've always been very, very fascinated in angels as well. But that's how we started out. That's how we became involved and how we became good friends with Ed and Lorraine Warren, meeting them at that lecture. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Conjuring.
I have, and I have had Andrea on my show 2 or 3 different times. So.
Mm-hmm. Yes, my dear friend Andrea, and you remember that scene where it shows them giving a lecture in front of an audience, a college audience. That's very much like what it was like when Carl and I met them, the college audience like that, and we did speak with them and become very well acquainted with them and develop that lifelong friendship. That's basically how we became involved in the very beginning.
Wow. Now, how did your wife come into the picture?
Well, that was quite a few years later. Sandra knew I had this interest, and she knew what I did. And in fact, while I was when Sandra and I were together, when I was with TAPS, and one time I come home from an investigation where I had been doing a house blessing or a cleansing, and she heard me casting out the spirits, and I was listening to the recording, trying to find if I could find any EVPs, and suddenly she's listening to this and saying, she says, "I'm living with the exorcist," because she's listening to me do this and hearing me on the tape recorder. But after a while, she became very, very interested. It's not like she had never had an experience herself. She had had an experience when she was quite young with a shadow person that could have been potentially very, very frightening for her if she was asleep at the time, but another family member reported it to her. So we think that was kind of like I don't know if you want to say a harbinger, but it was kind of like a preview of what was to come, as if something knew that she was going to be involved in this work. But she became very, very interested, and she joined TAPS with me, became a member, and she became invaluable, very quick learner. So she started joining me on cases, and after a while, it was like she'd always been there with me investigating on cases, and it was very, very, quite a blessing to have a partner with me now instead of doing it on my own.
All right, that's great. That's awesome. I think the husband-wife's teams are great. It gives you guys something to do together. Both of you love and enjoy doing it. So, yeah, I think it's awesome. So tell us how you got involved in TAPS and on the show and in Ghost Hunters.
Well, it sounds very dramatic, but actually it was a long process in coming and very, very humble origin. My brother and I had belonged to various paranormal groups. We were toying with the idea of starting our own group, and I happened to be doing an internet search, and suddenly, living in Warwick, Rhode Island, being a resident of Warwick, I was perusing different sites. I came across one that was located right in Warwick. I was amazed, and very, very humble, small site, but I liked the way it was very well done. Seemed very sincere. And I looked at the founder, Jason Hawes. His area code and his phone number were practically identical to mine, and I realized he lived within only a few miles radius of me. And wow, this guy's right in Warwick. And so, I was wondering, where has he been all my life? So Carl and I told Carl about him, and we met with Jason. And Jason's attitude towards us was, "Where you guys been all my life?" So we were surprised that, right in our own vicinity, there's a group that was starting out, but a very sincere group with humble origins. And of course, now it's, so big, so huge. But TAP started out very small, and we were invited to join the Atlantic Paranormal Society because of our experience. We concentrated. I was the historian and demonologist. Carl and I both concentrated on the demonology aspects, and of course, later on, Sandra joined me in that. And we were core members of TAPS for several years. Then the TV show came on, of course, Ghost Hunters, and that changed everything. And it really was a lot more than we expected. Kind of overwhelming because there were talks about doing a TV show, and of course, we were all told it's going to be just like your regular investigations. You're going to be going out investigating, and it's just that you're going to have a camera there sometimes. Some clients will be agreeable to media, so you'll have a camera there filming for the TV show. So we said, all right, just be ourselves, be natural. Well, that's a lot simpler said than what the reality was, because the show became huge practically overnight, very, very successful. And we were inundated with clients, so much so that it was actually two separate factions. It became the group that would go out and do the TV shows, and some that would do the non-media shows. Now, of course, the main, I would say the nucleus was before the TV show, the year leading up to the TV show. Sandra and our good friend Brian Hanwa and I were the three. We're the three amigos. We were going out every single weekend, and even if we didn't have an investigation, we'd be getting together for dinner and chatting and planning our next investigation. So we did a lot together, the three of us. And Carl, of course, joined us when he was available, and other team members. But we were out every single weekend. Now, of course, once the TV show started, that kind of broke that up, and we weren't as free to do work as we had been. Plus, there was a lot of clients that needed our help. So Sandra and I eventually branched off and formed our own organization, New England Anomalies Research, known as NEAR. So we could concentrate more on individual clients. But of course, we did stay friendly with Brian and the other members, and occasionally we were called in on different TAPS cases, off camera usually, to, even though my brother Carl and I were on the first and second seasons of Ghost Hunters, as you recall. Mm-hmm. But we, behind the scenes, we did a lot too. Sandra and I would be called in frequently on investigations for TAPS and other groups like New England Paranormal, which was Steve Gonzalez's group. And so that's what we've been doing since. We have our own core organization, NEAR, New England Anomalies Research, and we are frequently called upon to help with other groups, to assist them because of our specialty in the more challenging aspects of the work, as we call it. And so we try to network as much as possible, and we have a big caseload of our own, and we also help other groups as well. So that's basically how we function.
Wow. You're very, very busy. You got all these other groups calling in. So tell us a little bit about your Ghost or Near show.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, we have our own TV talk show, which is shown locally on public access. It's called Ghost Are Near, a little play on our name, and GHOSTSRNEAR. And what we do is it's a half-hour segment show where we interview guests who have had experiences with the paranormal, or they're investigators themselves, or authors. They've come out with books, and sometimes we go on location to different haunted areas, and we'll do a show on that, interview people. Sometimes we'll showcase our own investigations. If if the client is willing to be on the show, and we'll show conventions, interview people who have been in the work for a while. So we enjoy doing it. We've been doing it for several years now, and very, very much enjoy doing it. And you can also see our show on YouTube, youtube.com. You can go to our site and see. Of course, it's broadcast locally here in Rhode Island, but you can also go to youtube.com and see it. Look up Ghost Are Near, or go to our site, New England Anomalies Research, nearparanormal.com, and you can see our archived episodes there. So it's half-hour segment, and we really enjoy doing it.
Wow,
Sandra and I are hosts.
That's awesome. So now this channel is just in Rhode Island? I mean, it's a local channel in Rhode Island?
Yes, it's Rhode Island public access, but of course with the advent of YouTube, you can see it all over the world now, and we do have audience that is very widespread. We have people who watch us in Argentina. We've had hits from Argentina. We've had a lot of hits from Australia. So we do have quite a wide audience there, people who enjoy watching our show.
Wow, that's great. So can you explain to the listeners what demonic energy is?
Okay. Demonic energy is considered the negative energy that is utilized by demonic spirits. Demonic spirit being an evil spirit that is very malicious, very powerful, and it's not a deceased human spirit. It's not a human spirit. It can often masquerade as a human spirit, but it will use this dark energy, so to speak, and it's very, very negative and very, very antagonistic towards God and towards people. And it can be very, very deceptive. That's its main power, is deception, appearing to be what it is not in reality. The term demon is actually, of course, a very, very ancient word. Comes from ancient Greeks, the original word, but it meant originally simply a wise spirit, a very, very wise spirit, not necessarily an evil spirit. Of course, now in the present, we tend to associate the word demon with an evil spirit. And usually in the Catholic Church, a demon is known as an evil spirit, and a fallen angel, if you will. And that's basically what the demonic energy is, what a demonic spirit is.
Okay, so how does a demonic energy manifest in itself in human world?
It's a very mysterious process, but the demonic seems to be very active in our world. The only way I could describe it, the way I've experienced it, is they're always here, of course, just as we are here in the physical world, but to manifest in our reality, it's kind of like they're on a wavelength, a certain radio frequency, and they have to tune into our frequency. Now that's when, even though they are spirit creatures, that's when you can get some physical manifestations of this, because it will cause a disruption in our atmosphere when they begin to manifest in our wavelength, our reality, so to speak. So if they're going to do anything, they have to somewhat make their presence known. You'll feel a change in temperature, a radical change in temperature, or you'll just realize something's wrong in the atmosphere. Something's pulling energy out of you, because if they're going to manifest at all in the physical world, they need energy. They need energy to do anything, to manifest, and they'll sometimes draw upon people. And you'll actually feel this when they start to manifest if they're in your vicinity. A lot of people report, and I have felt this often, people report feeling very nauseous, very sick, as if the energy is being pulled right out of them. And you can really feel that something's wrong in the world. There's a disturbance. Well, if it was Star Wars, you'd say a disturbance in the Force. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that's what George Lucas based that on. He took aspects of basically all world religions and put them into the Force. And that's what you do. You feel a disturbance in the Force or in the atmosphere. Something is wrong. You know that something is just not right. It's becoming cold, and this energy is being drawn right out of you, and you will start feeling very, very oppressed. That's how they do manifest.
So someone would know if they were under a demonic attack by the drain of their energy and just being nauseous, or is there more side effects?
Oh, there's a lot more to it. That's just one aspect of it. Of course, you could be. That's another thing we do during the course of our investigations, and we have a wonderful team. I like to, if I could brag about my team for a moment.
Sure, go right ahead.
I think we have a very, very wonderful team. They're very, very compassionate and very, very thorough. Now, of course, Sandra's very wonderful at talking to clients and calming them down, especially if they've been badly frightened. She's very compassionate. Our team members are wonderful when they're talking to clients, and because a lot of people they're practically scared to death. We come in there and we use some levity, we use some humor, and they realize that we don't take ourselves too seriously and we can have fun too. We try to calm them down as much as possible, and there's people that have been experiencing some very, very negative activity, and we try to tell them how they can best protect themselves, how they can avoid it. Of course, the best way to block a punch is just not be there, from the Karate Kid.
Right.
It's the same with this. The best way is just to avoid it. You want to avoid it as much as possible, not to attract it, cut off its feeding source or its energy supply as much as possible. And the team goes in. One of the things we'll look for, suppose somebody's feeling they're feeling watched, that there's eyes upon them, they're not alone in the room. Well, could that be a spirit presence? Very possibly, but there's also alternate explanations. Something very simple, like somebody's sleeping too near, with their head too near their digital alarm clock. Now, of course, a lot of us do that, so we can just reach over and shut the snooze off. But that will emit energy waves, and that's where we use the EMF detectors, electromagnetic field, and other devices like that. Not necessarily to see if there's ghosts walking by, because that's, possible, yes, but very rare. Most of these tools we use are to measure radio waves and frequencies and electrical waves. So if you're sleeping next to a digital alarm clock and that's emitting electrical waves, that can make you feel very uncomfortable. There's even a form of temporal lobe epilepsy. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody is epileptic, but it can trigger certain parts of the brain and give you a feeling of unease or paranoia. That's why we always recommend, I'm sure you realize you're using your microwave, please stand at least 3 feet away from it. I try to. I don't always, but I try to, because you're dealing with dangerous electrical waves, and yeah, they can make you feel very uncomfortable. So sometimes it's not a spirit at all. Sometimes it's the fact that you're too near an electrical appliance that can give this feeling. When it's a spirit, though, when it's a demonic spirit, you will feel this draining of energy, but other things will be happening too. So usually that's why we do a very thorough investigation. We talk with the client, we investigate the house, the premises for ourselves, and see what's going on. Are other things happening? For example, are things happening in threes? That could be an indication. That's considered an insult to the Holy Trinity. If things are happening in threes, and things are happening in cycles like counterclockwise. So is one person, especially very important, is one person being attacked? Are they being oppressed? Is something targeting them in an effort to break them down, break down their personality, break down their psyche, make them more pliable? That's things we look for in cases such as this.
Now we have a question in the chat room. How often does it actually turn out to be demonic and not poltergeist manifestation?
Well, actually, for it to be full demonic, it's relatively rare. Usually we do find an alternate explanation. Sometimes often it's the person themselves. The person themselves has issues that they have to deal with. Not that a demonic spirit cannot take advantage of that, because sometimes they do. If a person has a certain weakness, they will sometimes take advantage of that. But usually the issue starts with the person themselves, and we try to help them resolve the issue or try to lead them to a professional that will deal with their situation. And even if it is spirit involved, that can't hurt to have someone evaluated for emotional troubles or what have you. And so that's what we look for. We look for people being targeted, people being, and like I said, it could be mental illness. A lot of times it is mental illness. Sometimes it's mental illness with spirit involvement. And of course, that makes it very, very difficult. It's not always as simple as it sounds.
Wow, that would be challenging. So what attracts the demonic energy? Is it a weak person, someone maybe that doesn't believe or have strong faith?
There's different ways that the demonic spirit can be attracted, and that's exactly what we refer to it as, the law of attraction. Sometimes it's just it's nothing anybody has done. Sometimes a person just happens to move into the wrong house, the wrong time, for whatever reason, and a spirit can be attracted to that person's energy. And so sometimes it's the law of attraction because somebody has used a Ouija board or some other conjuring device, some device of divination, where they've actually invited the spirit in. And of course, it starts out seeming like a harmless game. Most of the time, nothing will happen, but you are opening a door by using the Ouija board, and that can be considered an invitation. And the spirit can say, well, you invited me in. You're calling upon it, and it may seem like a very pleasant, benevolent spirit, where in reality, it's nothing of the sort. So they pretend to be all sorts of things. That's one way of inviting it in. Some people, of course, have gone all out and done the whole Faustian thing. They've called upon spirits or the devil to try to gain advantages and everything. Well, of course, then it's time to pay the price. I mean, fortunately, that rarely happens, but there are times where people have, we've dealt with situations where people have called in spirits and they do get more than they bargained for. Once the spirit's there, they find it's not as easy to get rid of as it was to bring in. And so sometimes it's generational. Sometimes it's generational. A spirit will follow somebody through a generation. Sometimes it will be every other generation. And of course, my friend Andrea's situation, that just happened to be, it was nothing they did. The family just moved into this situation, and the spirit activity in that house had been very, very low level for quite some time. They moved in, and all heck breaks loose, centering on Andrea's mother, Carolyn, and of course, eventually affecting the whole family. They were the first members of that family who were not directly related to the Arnold family. That may have been one thing that set it off. Also, they had young children, very, very active children, and the spirit could have been feeding off their energy. Mostly it was attacking Andrea's mother, Carolyn, though, and draining off her. That's a perfect example, by the way, of somebody being targeted by a spirit such as this.
Now, speaking of the conjuring and Andrea and her family at the farmhouse, how much was you involved in that? Was you with Andrea, or was you with the Warrens when they went in and did their investigations and met with the family?
Yes. In fact, it was our case originally. We are the ones that originally made contact with the family. And, of course, again, what I was saying earlier, there was no internet to get the word out back then. I just put this ad in a local paper about our services, PIRO, Parapsychological Investigation and Research Organization. And that's how we got involved with the Perrin case. And we investigated there, became good friends with them. And Andrea and I were especially close. And we found out that this family was going through just this horrific situation. Of course, the house is not like that now, but when they lived there, something set it off, and we came in there right in the midst of it. We agreed to investigate the house, and when we investigated it, we realized this was the real deal. As soon as you set foot in that house, you realized there was a, a negative energy force that was just surrounding the house and just draining you. There was extraneous phenomena going on, windows slamming shut, One of the daughters was slapped right off, practically off the bed, and I felt so bad for her. And you just see what this family was going through. They learned to live with it, but everybody has the limits. There's only so much you can live through. So it was our case originally, and we stayed with them. We stayed on the case with them. Then one night, Carolyn had this terrible manifestation that appeared just before daybreak in her bedroom of a spirit hovering beside her bed, doing this terrible. It was almost like I hesitate to say witch's chant because it was kind of unique, but that's where she was saying, I'll drive you out with death and gloom. I'll drive you mad with fiery brooms. And, of course, what are you most afraid of in a house like that? Fire.
Right.
So she was terrorizing Carolyn. Strangely, this woman seemed to have a dislocated neck, the spirit manifestation. The head was hanging off to one side. And very, very horrible face. You could hardly see the face. It was all decayed and desiccated. And what a thing to wake up to in the wee hours of the morning. So Carolyn called the next day, and she was just so upset. She was saying, I've been through, I grew up in Georgia. I'm a tough, strong woman, but this is beyond me. I can't take this anymore. What am I going to do? So fortunately, our chairperson, Donna, told her, Carolyn, listen, I'm going to call our friends, Ed and Lorraine Warren. They've had a lot of experience with this. They live right in Connecticut. I'm going to call them and ask their advice what we should do next. So immediately after getting off the phone with Carolyn Perrin, Donna, our chairperson, called Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now that's how the Warrens became involved. They did more than just consult. They said, we'll come down and we'll personally help you with this case. So that is how Ed and Lorraine became involved with the Perrin case in Harrisville. That became the premise for the movie The Conjuring.
Wow. Yeah, I've read the books. I'm waiting for her third book to come out. But it is so interesting. I mean, if you're into the paranormal, it's so interesting. And so much that family went through. That family went through so much. We have a couple questions in the chat room. Have you ever seen a demonic spirit manifest into a full apparition form?
I personally have seen partial manifestation of demonic spirits. I've seen the face starting to form. I've never seen the whole thing form completely into a full-bodied apparition. My brother has. My brother has seen a full apparition. In fact, he was just, he was downstairs where his bedroom was, and this is when we were living out in the country in Scituate. He had not quite drifted off to sleep, and this was in the wee hours of the morning. He opened his eyes, looked over, and there's this full-bodied apparition standing right over him. And I don't even know if you could call it an apparition because he had no idea who this woman was. She was dressed in Victorian clothes, had her hair done up in that style, kind of disheveled. Just this dead-eyed stare, just looking right at him. And then she just evaporated like a curtain going up. And he'd seen her in shadow form floating around. He thought it was me in the basement, and he'd look over, and it's a silhouette of a woman. He saw her in silhouette form, but this time she was a full apparition. And they had played with my brother and my sister had played with the Ouija board years ago. It had spelled out the name Sylvia, so for lack of a better identity, they referred to that woman as Sylvia. But usually when you see a demonic spirit, you will very, very rarely see its full form. It will usually appear partially disembodied, or it will appear in shadow form. When it does appear, very, very rare when a spirit like that does appear in its preternatural form, it's extremely horrific. Usually they will appear in shadow form, or they'll appear as even a pleasant form. They could appear in a pleasant form as a little girl or a child or something. However, there will always be something missing. It has to somehow, and I believe this is a cosmic law set by God, the demonic spirit has to appear partially unmanifested. In other words, something has to be wrong, something has to be missing. Usually a limb will be missing or the eyes will be missing, but it has to show that it is not a full human form.
Wow. Okay, we have another one in the chat room. Are all demons spirits of the devil?
Yes, in the connotation that we use demon today. Now, as I mentioned, in ancient Greece, the term demon, the demonic spirit, was not necessarily an evil spirit. It was simply a wise, knowing spirit, instead of just a what they used to call a shade, somebody's shade. A demonic spirit, a demon, in ancient Greece was considered a wise spirit. But demons are all, and the connotation we use today, demonic spirits are all of the devil, all of them, yes.
Wow. So, can you share with us the most frightening investigation that you've been on?
Well, of course, there was the parent case. That was very, very horrific. But there was also a case in the early 1980s, a case of possession, a demonic possession, we believe, that my brother and I worked on. And this was another surprise. Like, you don't know what you always be prepared for the unexpected. Sometimes nothing will happen, but then you go into certain cases like this one. It was actually a friend of ours, their nephew, was 14 years old, and he was being taken over by a spirit. And terrible the way he was taken over. He felt so bad for him, and he would have no memory of it when he came out of it. This is what we call transient possession. Usually possession will be transient, it will come and go. But so we were invited to assist in an exorcism of this young boy. And in fact, even his own family was afraid to be in the same room alone with him, but I felt so bad for him. I went in the room alone and I asked him, what is going on? I interviewed him, and he told me that when he was a very young child, he was going for a walk with his family in the cemetery. He found a glove, and just like little kids do, he touched it. Something grabbed him, some spirit attached itself to him somehow through this glove he picked up. And of course, when he became about 13, 14 years old, he started going under episodes of possession. Well, they arranged for an exorcism, and I was told that a priest would be there. I thought it would be a regular Catholic rite of exorcism, and we were going to be there to assist because the family trusted us. When we got there, we found out that it was not a traditional Catholic exorcism. It was actually a Santerian ceremony of exorcism, and his aunt was the priestess, or the brujeria, that was going to, they were a Hispanic family. She was going to cast it out. And talk about mayhem. I mean, but in some ways, this was a perfect example of extraneous phenomena. Yes, this boy he had super strength when he was under possession, but also things were going on in the room. The atmosphere would change. 3 seconds, I call it the 3-second warning. 3 seconds before he went under possession, you felt that cold draining. The atmosphere was like very, very unwelcoming, very hostile, and very unhealthy. And furniture would move too. Furniture would move. My brother was sitting in a family easy chair when he went under possession. It was moved a few feet back across the room with my brother sitting in it. I mean, my brother and I are no lightweights either, and this was moved right backwards in front of us. And then he went under possession. He was screaming. It looked like he was being picked up like a rag doll and being slammed repeatedly on the floor by unseen hands. And certainly a very mild-mannered, docile young man, but when he was under possession, he was screaming and threatening and just very bestial and horrific. It took all of us in the room, all of us men there, to hold him down. And at one point, 2 other guys let go of him, so I was sent flying backwards, and certainly got a workout that night. But yeah, that was very, very horrific and very, very emotionally draining and exhausting.
Wow.
Very horrendous situation.
So we have another question in the chat room. Have you encountered demons affecting a variety of religions?
Demons will affect a variety of religions, yes. Most religions do have their demonic spirits. They're not always referred to as demonic spirits, but evil spirits or unwholesome spirits, negative spirits. When we go into a house, I will not start out using the word demon. Sometimes the family will start talking about demons, but I start out by using a negative, contrary spirit, parasitic, a lot of things will go backwards, counterclockwise. So I refer to them as negative spirits or contrary spirits. But yes, we've gone into a Jewish household, and of course their version of a demon is the Dybbuk, very similar to the Christian aspect of a demon. There's Hindu, of course, and all these religions have their clergy that are specialized clergy to deal with these types of spirits. But yes, we have gone into even people that are pagan. We've gone into a pagan household where they were having a demonic attack, and so it doesn't really seem that somebody. We've gone into houses where somebody has no firm religious belief and they're having demonic spirit attack. We've gone into Jewish, into pagan, so it doesn't necessarily limit itself to just one religion for a demonic attack. Somebody can have no beliefs at all. Andrea's mother was not a firm believer when she moved into that house. 10 years later, she was a complete believer when they left.
Well, the reason why she was asking is she has Catholic background, and she says it seems to be always Catholic, so that was the reason for her question.
Right, and a lot of times, of course, Catholics, when you think of exorcism and casting out spirits, most people will think of Catholicism because they have the ritual, they have it written down, they have the formulaic prayers for casting out spirits. They have the ritual Romanum, which of course is the exorcism of demonic spirits.
So have you ever performed an exorcism?
Yes, I have performed an exorcism and participated in an exorcism and performed an exorcism. It's not something I would recommend, and it's not something I look forward to going out and doing. It was there was a time when I happened to be available and somebody went under possession. I prayed with that person, was able to cast the spirit out. But that is very, very dangerous. And I think, most of the time, whenever possible, you should not do this unless you have trained clergy with you to help and assist, because there can be a backlash. It can be very, very dangerous.
Right. How many have you performed?
I've actually successfully performed one exorcism. I participated in exorcisms, I myself, because I was the person on hand and the person needed help right then. The person was suffering. I felt moved to cast the spirit out, and it was successful. But it's not something I go around doing all the time.
Right.
Most of what Sandra and I do is we do house cleansings. That's most of what we do, where we do prayers throughout the house, and sometimes a binding, sometimes a deliverance too. And we do work with clergy. We have actually started clergy who were not trained in this in seminary, showed them how we do a house blessing or a binding of spirits, which is not an exorcism, but it's similar, like a deliverance session.
So, what are the risks that is involved investigating demonic spirits? I mean, we know they can attach, and we know they can do very harmful and meaningful things, but do you think when a team goes in to investigate anywhere, whether they know that there's demonic spirits or it's just friendly spirits, cleansing equipment and themselves before they go in and come out? I mean, what are the risks, and what do you suggest teams to do?
I suggest the main thing is to go to these situations respectfully. Even if it's just to investigate an alleged haunting, it doesn't hurt to pray for protection beforehand. Just take a moment and ask for protection for yourself and your team, that you will be protected. Sandra and I pray from, for example, one of the scriptures we used is Ephesians 6 from the New Testament. We use the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, where that speaks of the armor of God. We find that very, very effective. One thing that teams tend to do, they watch TV, they see these TV shows, and they want to emulate that. They'll
Right.
go in provoking the spirits to get a reaction. That is not the thing to do, because that can cause real trouble, real trouble. And I can't emphasize that enough, that people go in and they'll start insulting and saying things to these spirits just to get a reaction. that can cause a backlash. That's asking for a fight. That makes it personal. You see, that makes it one-on-one. So the thing not to do is to make it personal, especially with one of these inhuman spirits. That can cause a terrible backlash because now you're inviting it to become involved in your own life. And plus, I mean, you're insulting something that you don't even see. What if there is the chance? What if there is a chance that there is some lost and wandering spirit that is in torment and everything? And, you know, somebody comes in just to get a reaction and starts insulting, hurling insults at this spirit. You know, so that's why I think it's a bad idea to do this kind of insulting provocation all around. So that is one of the main dangers, is going in, provoking, not going in with protection, not praying. That's what we always do. When we leave, we always pray that nothing will be allowed to follow us home, which is vindictive or harmful. Only angelic spirits, good spirits of the light. That's what we pray, that no harmful spirit will be allowed to attach themselves or follow us.
With that being said about the provoking, how did you feel when you were filming Ghost Hunters in the provoking?
Well, I, of course, didn't do a lot of provoking, and I wasn't in the scenes where they were provoking. However, a lot of people did take that very respectfully, and of course, there's a lot of things you don't see that go on in a TV show, especially such as this. A lot of times the camera crew would come up to me and say, Keith, could you please say a little prayer before we do this? None of our equipment's working. It keeps stopping. It keeps breaking down. I'm very uncomfortable. Could you please say a prayer for us? And, of course, I would. And one of them asked me to bless his St. Christopher medallion that he had. And so I had a good rapport with the camera crew and behind the scenes and everything. So when we went into these scenes, we did it very, very, very respectfully. And of course, you know, it is a TV show. Sometimes people will get carried away and they want to come out and say things to get a reaction. But I have to say, at least when I was there in the scenes and working on Ghost Hunters, things were handled very, very respectfully.
I just wondered because, you know, it is known for, you know, Zach is known for his provoking, even though,
oh yes,
you know, I don't believe in the provoking, but yeah, that's
Zach's modus operandi, and that's
he gets a little
you know,
carried away.
I always hope he's safe and stays safe, because that can be very dangerous.
Now I'm gonna ask a question out of the chat room, then I'm gonna put you on the spot. The question in the chat room: can an average person cleanse their house with sage and it be effective?
That's actually a good question. Can an average person cleanse their house with sage? Yes and no. Sage can be very effective. It has very cleansing properties, but I personally do not use sage. I would recommend somebody that has experience using sage to use it. Plus, there are spirits, like demonic spirits, who will take that as an insult. They do not like the smell of it, and sometimes it can make things worse. Sometimes it'll make them lay low, but then it'll be a backlash. We've personally seen this happen with families where smudging has been done, and perhaps it was not done effectively or thoroughly, but it has caused backlash because these spirits will take it as an insult, and they'll really get antagonistic. We've even had them tell us that on EVP, electronic voice phenomena. We've had a spirit start cussing us out because somebody had saged the house.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot for a minute, and then we have another question in the chat room. With you working with Ghost Hunters and TAPS, what you see on TV, I mean, we know it's going to be dramatized a little bit and a little stretched out, but how much of it was real and how much of it is fake?
Well, I can basically speak for myself. When I was there, it was all real. It was all real. You know, I can't speak for everybody, but when I was there on the set, it was all real. It was 100% genuine. There was an episode where they actually filmed the entire cleansing of a house, where I did a cleansing and I did a blessing over the client as well. And that was very, very true to life. So you see these things. I guess you have to judge for yourself how much is real and how much. I mean, there are TV shows, and they have to come out with a new episode every couple of weeks. But there are some very, very genuine situation, and you have to remember, even before the TV show, like Sandra and Jason and Grant and Steve Gonzalez, we were on cases that were potentially very, very dangerous, and we had to be a team. We had to be a team that stuck together. And I'll never forget one time before the TV show, I was doing a blessing of a house that was demonically infested. And as we were going up the stairs, Jason stood at the top of the stairs. He said, "I want somebody in front of Keith and in back of him at all times, because if there's an attack, it's going to be at him. I want him surrounded." So that's how we started out, and there was that camaraderie there.
Wow. Well, I am fascinated with black-eyed children, and my husband and I have been working on some stuff with black-eyed children, doing some research and putting some things together. What are your thoughts on black-eyed children being demonic in nature? Do you believe they are?
Yeah, I would say that could be a demonic manifestation. I've certainly prayed about these situations, and it's ironic that when I was studying some things about black-eyed children, and I thought, how hurtful is this to actually affect a child or a child image like this, black-eyed children coming up to you, to use that image. But I prayed about this. I went out, for some reason, children were attracted to me. They kept looking at me and smiling at me. Children that didn't know me, they just kept making faces and smiling at me. So it was the opposite of that. It was just the opposite of that. And I was shown how beautiful, reminded how beautiful children are. But
Right.
things like that, that's a deception. They're using images of children to frighten people, to show people that they're being watched. However, doing that, they risk giving themselves away. They do risk giving themselves away, so they're going to proceed very cautiously and to a very limited extent. I'm talking about these spirits themselves.
Right. Do you feel the same with the white-eyed children? I know they're just starting to come out with some cases of people having the encounter with the white-eyed children. Do you feel the same demonic? They seem to be more aggressive, the white-eyed children.
The white-eyed children?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I would say the same. However, confronting them, what I would do, I would just use scripture. I would say, children are of the Father's kingdom. As Jesus said, such is my Father's kingdom, because obviously, Sandra and I do take the Christian approach. Mm-hmm. And that's what we do when we are blessing a home. We go into a child's room, we use scripture where Jesus blessed the children. That's what I would say. And I think that if you confront one of these children in faith, if it's a real child or if it's a demonic child, it will make itself known, which it is.
Okay, another question in chat room. What is your take on aliens?
My take on aliens. I believe there are other life forms, other myriad of life forms. I believe there were life forms on the earth even before people. There are also a race of advanced spirit creatures that were on the earth before us and have been watching over us. I do also believe in there was a race of spirits that we call angels, of course. We call them now. And that they didn't interfere. Of course, you hear about ancient aliens contaminating our history and our bloodline. I do believe there were spirit creatures. You can call them aliens if you wish, but they were an advanced race of spirit creatures that did interfere with our bloodline and contaminated our population many, many years ago in prehistory.
Wow.
I do believe that if you do encounter something that is alien, you still pray for protection, you pray for God's protection, or you pray for the protection of a higher power to be safe, just to be on the safe side.
So you've kind of done research in what could all be demonic, as far as the aliens, the black-eyed children, the white-eyed children, the different spirits.
Right. I always try to be prepared. Give the spirit the benefit of the doubt, or the creature the benefit of the doubt, but always, I wouldn't just come up and start accusing it of being an unholy spirit, but I would always be protected in a situation such as that when confronting such a being as that.
Now, when you were talking about angels, are you talking about guardian angels?
Guardian angels and watchers as well. You have to remember, not all angels are good. Some of them are fallen angels. So there were angels that were watchers, and this goes back to prehistory. Angels that were watchers that were supposed to be protectors of mankind. Not all of them were protectors. Some of them introduced us to various technologies, and also, I personally believe, corrupted our bloodline as well, did genetic experimentations with us, and created hybrids, mutants as well. This goes back to very, very ancient times, but I do believe that this is where some of our mythology comes from, such as the Titans, the Phoenixes, the Griffins, things like that. I do believe they may have an aspect of truth to them. Because
Wow.
various cultures all over the world have similar mythology. You can look back, and there's always the demigod. There's gods producing children through human women. There's, the story of Hercules. There's the story of the Titans, of Zeus coming down and impregnating women. A lot of cultures have this aspect of the mythology. I think there could be a grain of truth to it myself.
Now, we have another question in the chat room, and he come in kind of late. We kind of already went over this, but just so he gets his answer, and I want to make sure I get his question out there. He wants to know if you think people with mental illness are more likely to be possessed.
Not more likely. I wouldn't say people with mental illness are more likely to be possessed. However, if it is a situation where a demonic spirit is oppressing somebody, they will sometimes use their mental illness or their problems to gain a foothold, to try to weaken that person and gain a more hold. It's not that their mental illness will attract demonic spirits or make somebody more vulnerable to possession, but if they are in the wrong situation where a demonic spirit happens to be around and somebody's doing some kind of conjuring or spirit divination, sometimes they will pick on that person's weakness. And they have no reservation of picking on a sick child or a person that's unstable. They will do these things. They'll look for weaknesses.
Wow. Well, Keith, we're about at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the Haunted Harvest Moon. And
My pleasure.
it's been great. Everyone's asking for you to come back, so we'll have to get you back on here and get some more questions for you. It's a fascinating, the demonology side of the paranormal is fascinating. I enjoy it. Don't know if I could do it, but I am fascinated with it. So thank you so much, and tell Sandra I hope she gets to feeling better.
I will tell her. I'll pass the message on.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Now for all you listening, do yourself a favor. Go lock your doors, close your blinds, and don't forget to look under your bed tonight. However, it may not do any good, because whether you want to believe it or not, the paranormal is real, and it's all around us. You've been listening to Vonda on the Haunted Harvest Moon, and until next Tuesday, stay safe.